The leak of a draft Supreme Court opinion potentially overturning Roe v. Wade has sparked demonstrations and renewed a focus on who leaked it and if they committed a crime. Chief Justice John Roberts, who confirmed the document's authenticity, has directed the marshal of the court to launch an investigation. For more on this, let's bring in National Security Attorney Bradley Moss. So, Mr. Moss, good to see you. We asked this question earlier, right after the leak happened, to another attorney. Some Republicans have called for the Justice Department to launch a criminal probe into the leak. In your views, is this something that the DOJ can investigate? I know that the former Attorney General Bill Barr, in an interview that he did in a podcast, said that, perhaps obstruction of justice or the...
I know. Is it a crime?
Is it obstruction of justice? And, I mean, that would, I guess, be a crime. But just leaking a document to the press, is that in itself a crime?
Generally speaking, no. I mean, let's be very clear. This was a fireable offense. If they discover who the leaker was, if they find out who produced this document to the press, that's a fireable offense. And assuming they were a lawyer, a licensed attorney, it's a reason to refer them to the state bar. But from a criminal matter, none of the relevant criminal provisions really would apply here. One, obviously, as you mentioned, was obstruction of justice, but it's really unclear how that would be construed here as trying to interfere with the proceeding, given that it's simply the draft opinion and there's no indication it's going to stop what ultimately is occurring. The only alternate option that some people have mentioned was 18 U.S.C. 641, which is about stealing government property. But the Justice Department's own manual says they won't pursue prosecution in the context of simply information disseminated to the press, because they view it as more of an administrative disciplinary matter than a criminal matter.
So, Bradley, I don't know if you know this, but I had two questions when I was thinking about this. Is a draft opinion a classified document? And do the people who work within the Supreme Court have to sign some sort of document as part of their employment that requires them to keep what happens within the Supreme Court confidential? We work for CBS. We can't go talking about some confidential investigative report that CBS is working on because, we signed some documents saying, listen, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. So one, no, it's not a classified document. Classified documents are only the creation of the executive branch in matters involving national defense and obviously classified information. A draft Supreme Court opinion on a non-classified case, namely this one dealing with abortion, would have nothing to do with classified information. So the classified criminal provisions that you ultimately think of with leakers don't apply here. But to the other point you raised, there certainly could be basically an employment contract, similar to what you guys would have with CBS and what most people have with their employer, that requires them as a matter of their employment to maintain the confidentiality of some information. That is a breach of contract issue. It's not a criminal issue.
All right. So the Supreme Court marshal is looking into this as it proceeds with the investigation. What happens when, presumably it's not going to be that hard. What do you think? It strikes me that there are so few people that would have access to this memo that, all it takes is a couple of interviews. And frankly, it is kind of surprising that we haven't learned the identity of the person yet, which could potentially mean that it was one of the justices.
That would be scandalous.
Yeah,
but it could, right? Come on. If it's a clerk, I can't see how that person wouldn't be found out immediately. But if it's a justice, then the court has, they have to, they circle around their own, even if they don't agree with them politically or judicially. Circle the wagons, and you launch an investigation, but nothing really comes of it.
Yeah, that would certainly be a scandal of, shocking, unprecedented nature if it was actually one of the justices. And I don't expect it is. I'm pretty sure it's going to turn out to be one of the clerks. And that is a small universe of individuals who would have access to this kind of information. So the question, obviously, that comes into play here is how deep, how detailed of investigation the marshal of the Supreme Court will run. Will there be coordination with the Justice Department? Obviously, if there's an indication that something was hacked, that someone got into something they weren't supposed to have access to, if there was money exchanged, those would be obvious predicates for the Justice Department to get involved. But given what we currently have and given the information at issue, it's unlikely, in my view, DOJ would be involved here. This is going to be something internal with the marshal. They'll likely bring in all the various clerks for interviews. If they lie, that would still be a criminal provision, 18 U.S.C. 1001 most likely, that would apply. I think the person would ultimately confess to that.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're being investigated for a non-criminal offense,
But then you
you
lie.
lie to an investigator, then you're in trouble criminally.
Correct. It happens all the time. People who get caught up in internal inquiries, internal investigations at various agencies often get tripped up by this. People who will provide false testimony to Congress can get tripped up in that. All of that testimony, all those interviews are always subject to 18 U.S.C. 1001. You cannot knowingly provide false information. What remains to be seen here is if they can track down any type of metadata, any type of phone calls, anything to show who was talking to the Politico reporters, namely Josh Gerstein, who published this story.
You know what they say, right? It's not the deed, it's the cover-up that gets you. That might very well be the case and when it comes to this. Hey, Bradley Moss, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good morning.